All right, Chargers fans, I know the Colts game was a disaster, a bitter and utter disaster. So let's talk about quickly how that game went, what went wrong, what needs to be corrected, and let's get into this Thursday night football matchup against the Vikings, where hopefully we can bounce back in a big way. Let's get into it. That's a rough part of that video to digest at this moment. Man, it was a rough week. It was definitely a rough week for Chargers fans abroad, and there's definitely not a lot that we can take away from this particular matchup. That was positive. A lot of negatives, a lot of exposure that happened in this game, and it was not pretty at all. It was not pretty at all. The Colts pretty much did what they wanted. And I have to argue that, especially from a Chargers perspective and his regime there, Michigan, and in the last few years, 49ers and other places I've seen Harbaugh and Harbaugh-led teams, Jim or John, to be honest, I haven't seen this type of collapse or I guess you can say drubbing from that particular coaching staff. So I don't know, man. It's a lot to digest and dissect, and if anybody can fix it, he can. But yeah, there's a lot to clean up here. There's a lot of things that are working together against the Chargers at this point. We just have to be honest about that. The injuries, the opponents that they're facing, just really bad matchups. It's a lot. It's a lot. So, yeah, let's quickly get into, because we want to get in and out of this particular matchup and get on to the Vikings, because we got the Vikings tonight at home wearing the Navy jerseys. I'm excited about that. I'm going to have my Junior Seau jersey on tonight is paying homage to that particular rendition of our uniforms. Can't wait to see those uniforms on the primetime solo game. But yeah, man, we got to talk about this Colts game real quick. We just got to get it out. Me, being a former coach, former player that I am, I always look at this from a football perspective. And if I was in that position playing or coaching, I would definitely, have a lot to say about what went wrong and what is definitely a red flag up to this point through 7 games. So, yeah, we got to talk about it. We got to talk about it. So, starting off with the review that is the Colts game, week 7, man. A game we want to forget, I'm sure. It's not something we want to harp on. But let's just get into analytics of it. Let's just get into the brass tacks of it all from a football perspective real quick. Yeah, it's a lot to talk about, man. I mean, it's a lot of points here. I can really go deep dive in it, but I'm not going to brutalize you too much as fans, right? Listen to the podcast and abroad, I'm not going to brutalize you. I'm just going to get to it real quick. Bottom line, we got our coach. That's saying a lot. Jim Harbaugh and his experience. Jesse Minter, supposedly being a rising defensive coordinator. A lot of people tagged him as being the next head coach in the head coaching cycle. It was bad. I mean, just holistically, special teams was bad. The defense was horrible. The offense wasn't that much better. So, yeah, we just got flat out coach. Shane Steichen in that group, Lou Anarumo in that group over there were just they are a step ahead from a lot of people, man. I would argue again, not trying to get the coach too much praise. This is a Chargers podcast, but just from a football purist perspective, I would like to see this Chiefs and Colts matchup, sooner than later, because I think that that would be a really good one. I would like to see them up against that Chiefs defense and Mahomes and those guys, and to see what they're really made of, because they might just be the real deal. I had my doubts about Daniel Jones and that offense and things of that nature. I like their weapons, like the O-line and their running back, but clearly I wasn't, a fan of Daniel Jones being the Pro Bowl type quarterback right now, but he's lighting it up. He's doing what he wants, and he's definitely seems comfortable. So, getting back to the Chargers in this itself, we really got outcoached as a team. We really got outcoached from top to bottom. And drawing down to that, they got out schemed. It seemed like they were a step out behind the 8 ball when it came down to what the coach did on offense and defense. It was just behind the 8 ball. It really was. It seemed out of sorts. It seemed like a fish out of water. And this is weird. Being home should be comfortable. You had ample time to prepare. getting out scheme is you just can't have that. At this level, at this this time period where we're at in the NFL, where Harbaugh is in his career, you shouldn't be getting out schemed. And it's more so from a defense perspective than offense. But yet again, you can't get out schemed in this league. You just can't. But that's what happened. Got out schemed. They had the blueprint of the weaknesses of what the Chargers have and what it is, and they exploited the hell out of it. I'm going to tell you, I haven't seen this type of level of exposure in quite some time. People were harkening back to, I saw the meme where they were taking Justin Herbert's picture and folding it back to Brandon Staley. That type of, I guess you can say out of source defense I hadn't seen since he was coaching. Just to put it plain, it was kind of spot on. I mean, I'm not sitting here acting like he's Staley, because that's definitely not what he is, or has been since he's been with the Chargers. But it almost looked like, he took a day off and let Staley call plays, for a week, and it's just everybody was a step slow. Everybody's a step slow. And I would say this, and I'm gonna make this pretty clear and pretty poignant point here, when it comes down to playing defense and just calling plays in general in any level, right? Boys club all the way through pros. When the defense is too complicated, terminology, scheme, just too much to remember, it really confuses and makes your defense play slow. I don't care how fast you are from an athletic perspective. If you don't have a clear understanding of what you're doing on defense, and it's simplistic in its scheme, in its entirety, you will have issues like we saw on Sunday. And I have a feeling that might be what's going on here a little bit. I think Justin Herbert might be getting too cute or too complex, in his play calling and the schemes and things he wants to do. They're kind of trying to trick and quote unquote confuse the defenses or offenses for that, for that matter. It just seemed like everybody was a step slow. The run defense integrity was bad. The people out of position playing slow behind us, a step slow behind the play, always chasing the play, missing tackles. It was a lot of disorganization going on defense on Sunday. I just didn't understand it. I haven't seen this defense play that disordered or just out of sorts, if you will, since Justin Herbert's been there. So maybe he tried to get too cute with the scheme and try to get too nuanced and too complex with the scheme. And I just need to be able to know exactly what we're doing conceptually, and so I can play fast. You just need to move and react. Too much thinking goes on when you play defense. It's a recipe for disaster. You're going to, especially with a good offense, you're going to play from behind. You're going to be chasing all day. And I feel like that's what the Chargers were doing. They were chasing all day. They just didn't really understand what they really wanted to accomplish defensively, whatever Justin Herbert put in for that week. Again, I wasn't in the room, but just my football brain tells me when you play like that, and I think that's what Brandon Staley's biggest problem was. I don't know if he can coach, at a head coaching level or not. I mean, clearly he failed with the Chargers, but I just think his system was too complex. I just think they just got sick and tired of the fact of the complexity and the nuance and trying to learn this and learn that. And they just didn't, it was way too overcomplicated for no reason. And he just got sick and tired of it. It didn't work. And the fact that it just, it made them look horrible on the field. It was embarrassing. So they just got sick and tired of him, ultimately, which got him fired. So I hope Justin Herbert's not falling into that particular, rabbit hole. But that's really how it looked. They looked like they were confused on defense, and it was too much going on from play calling and just give me if I had a 2-page scouting report or 2-page play sheet, you made it 4 this week, I'm confused. It's a whole lot to digest and understand and really get down to perfection in a week. So trying to, I understand this is the better offense, one of the better offenses we face all year, but if you changed up things too much, that's where the defense got confused at, and there's really put them out of sorts and had them chasing all day. That's why I think it lands, for me. But from a defense perspective, that was, pretty much it. Clearly, the lack of protection on offense, the D-line getting and the edges getting after Herbert all day, the turnovers clearly, and I think that was a byproduct of the protection or lack thereof for Herbert. And of course, the injuries, man. Tackles missing, one of the 4th and 5th and 6th string tackles. The interior D-line giving up pressure. Zion, Bradley Bozeman, and Mekhi Becton collectively can't seem to pick up a stunt to save their life. It's brutal. It was brutal. Herbert threw 2 uncharacteristic picks, but yet again, I really feel like, and I'll get into that why I think that is, but he threw 2 really bad and uncharacteristic picks, and I feel like until the game got out of hand, he really didn't settle down and start really getting back to his accurate points of throwing the football. He was highly inaccurate in the first half, throwing balls behind guys, missing guys. It's very uncharacteristic, and I think that has a lot to do with the pressure. But I'll break that down in a second. But that was my synopsis of the Colts game, man. It was bad all around. It's bad all around. I mean, it's not much you can tell. But when you have bad losses like this, especially from a coaching perspective, it lends to the idea of having a temperature check with your team. What is the attitude of the team after a loss like that? You have to ask these questions like, does Herbert trust his O-line, which I don't think he does. I think that a lot of quarterbacks that have O-line issues, and I even watched this with CJ Stroud with the Texans, and the O-line not being able to protect him. He has happy feet. He's not comfortable. He does not trust the O-line. He feels like his O-line is eventually going to get him hurt or killed. So he's very, I guess you can say, skittish in a sense, where he comes down to his O-line and he does not look comfortable at all. So he doesn't feel like he can deliver the ball or wait for things to develop, because hell, you just don't trust the idea that a 300-pound guy's not going to fall on your face in any given moment. So that weighs in the back of your mind. It's all, even the best quarterbacks will tell you that they don't like pressure. I got to be able to be trust my O-line. They're going to block for me and I can deliver the ball. And I think that's part of Herbert's problem. I don't think he trusts the O-line, and why would he? They're giving up the most pressures on any quarterback in the league this year, and it's not even close. I think there's like a 20 pressure gap. I want to say if it's like 62 for us, it's like 40 something for another team. Look at the numbers if you want exact, but I know there's a wide margin from us in the second team that's giving up the most pressures. It is not good. And to cover that up and act like that's not a real issue for the coaching staff is another red flag for me. They got to know that's a problem, and Herbert is being affected by it. And I really think that the protection or lack thereof is pressing him into mistakes. I think that at some points, as hard-nosed and as tough as he is, he knows those hits going to accumulate. And the more hits he takes, the more likely he's going to get hurt. And we all know this. Not wishing that on him, hoping it does not happen. However, it's a compound league. You have 10 more games to play. If you keep taking punishment and hits like this, it's going to add up. So I think he's getting to the point now where he's trying to get rid of the ball a little bit earlier, which is allowing him to throw behind receivers, miss receivers, be inaccurate, and throw interceptions. Because I would argue until he went into this game, every interception he had was caused by something else. It wasn't a direct, faux pas on his part or mistake on his part. It was a direct correlation to a tip pass or somebody falling down, things of that nature. A batted ball by the receiver, batted up in the air and being caught by another defensive back. So he hadn't thrown a bad pick, this year up until this game. And I think that he's getting to the point where the pressure is like, okay, I can't trust it. It's not getting any better. They're not doing anything about it. So I got to protect myself because they're not doing it. So I think that's really, really weighing on him for sure. And then again, the dwindling of D-line. I mean, we got people that's hurt now on IR. Tito Bonio's gone. Naquan and Deshaun have been out in and out of the lineup. Justin Boyge, he's even when he's out there, he's not been doing much. So I think we started with like 7 to 8 long linemen. Now we're down to 4. So Terry Tart and Jamari Caldwell, who is also ill this week, so he's been dealing with an illness, so he might not be 100%. It's a lot of issues going on with the D-line, man. It really is. So that's adding to it, and that's really weakening the I guess you can say, decent, not great run defense we had up front already. So that's an issue. So yeah, I mean, the attitude on the team is probably not great right now. It really isn't. And how do you fix that as a coach? I mean, it's definitely different team to team. So I really can't give you an answer how you fix it as a global quote unquote answer, but it really just depends on how well you know your team and how much you can, get them to believe and trust in the idea that you can right the ship and get right. And hopefully that changes come Thursday night tonight against the Vikings, man. But we'll see. But those are the issues, man. And I hope the attitude isn't as bad as I think it is, but it's getting to a fever pitch. And if it don't get people back and start to get, into a situation where you can fix these issues, then it's gonna linger and get worse, just to be honest. So, talking about injuries, we'll get to that, before we get to keys to victory real quick. Of course, Mario Hampton's still out with an injury with his ankle. He's on IR to return. Hassan Haskins, on top of the, running backs woes we already have, he's out this week with a knee. He's not going to play. So I'm assuming that we're looking at a Kamani Vidal and Naeem Himes show, unless they maybe elevate Jared Patterson or somebody like that for the game. News hadn't broke yet. But, we're looking at least 2, maybe 3 running backs for this game. Don't know yet, but at least 2. And 2 names we don't normally hold in high regard as household names, right? Kamani Vidal and Naeem Himes, right? Because Naeem Himes was on the practice squad. Actually, so both of them were at one point. So yeah, there's that. But Khalil Mack is practicing full this week. But I'm gonna say this about Khalil Mack, ladies and gentlemen. I'm gonna be honest with y'all. Khalil Mack is still hurt, man. I'm sorry. I mean, I'm just gonna be honest with you. Khalil Mack is still hurt. That dislocated elbow is still bothering him. He still got that giant brace on there. He does not look right. He does not look like his normal strong self. And why would it if he dislocated his elbow? He did have another week to kind of rehab. He didn't play a whole lot of snaps on Sunday. I think it was like 12, but he don't look right, man. And I think he's forcing himself back onto the field to try to help the team because he know they sorely need it, his run defense and his pass rushing ability. But man, I still think he's hurt, and I'm not sure how much he's going to be able to be effective if he plays more snaps this week against the Vikings. I'm not sure. Maybe give him 24 snaps this week, kind of double his total from last week. But yeah, you need him out there, but it's a rough go, man, because he's having issues with that arm, man. And I'm not sure, if and when it's going to get better. I'm not sure how much time he needs, but yeah, it's not the same Khalil Mack, man. It's rough. It's rough to watch. It really is. But hopefully the good news is Joe All to come back. High ankle sprain, his ankle, he's questionable. He did practice in the last week and fully this week. And we only had a short week, so it's only like 2 days of practice. But yeah, he's questionable. Hopefully he plays the left tackle. We get him back. There's a blessing. Troy Dyer's questionable with his knee. We need him back on special teams, especially losing Caleb Murphy to being cut and subsequently claimed by the Patriots off the waiver wire. We completely lost him. That was a mistake on the Chargers' part, letting him walk and putting him out there, dangling him out there, thinking nobody would scoop him up with the preseason he had. And the Colts are right on it. I mean, not the Colts, excuse me. The Patriots are right on it. They scooped him up and he's gone. He's on their roster, so we're not getting him back. So we need Troy Dye back on special teams because having Tuli Tuipulotu on special teams is not it. And that's why they gave up that big return on Sunday. So we got to fix that. Hopefully he can play and solidify that special teams area, but that's questionable. Jamari Salyer practiced full this week with his knee. He was an emergency lineman last week. They didn't really plan on playing him. Kind of give him another week to play. Yeah, so I don't know. I'm not sure what they're gonna do with him because I'm questioning Trey Pipkins as well. Yeah, he's they saying he's a chance to play. He's a questionable game time decision as well. But listen to what I'm saying when I see him in practice. He had a ridiculously large knee brace on his left knee. And if he has to wear that thing in the game because his knees needs to be protected, he's not going to move well. And I'm sorry, if he does play, or he tries to play, and he makes it through the whole game, he's going to give up a lot of pressure. Because I'm sorry, to be a tackle, a swing tackle at that, to be able to have the kick step and deal with speed rushers, especially the guys like a Dallas Turner and Grenard and those guys for the Vikings, he is going to have problems. I would argue if Jawari Salas was healthier in a sense, I would just roll him out there and let Trey Pipkins sit another week. That's what I would do because you don't want to see him being sacrificed like that. We all argue that Trey Pipkins isn't the best, in his healthy rights. So if he is out there with a knee brace and hampered even with the left knee, I know he's a right tackle, but even with the left knee, him try to kick step and move and try to laterally move and move backwards, try to block defensive edge rushers, it's going to be a disaster. It really is. I don't see how you can move with that thing. I really don't. So hopefully they'll sit him out and let Jamari play if he's healthier, but we'll see. Elijah Molden with his thumb is questionable. He did practice this week, so that's a hopeful thing. Him getting back in that secondary to help out that ailing pass defense unit. So that's hopefully we see him. And then Cal Kennard practice full this week as well. But him, just like Caleb Murphy, has issues with edge defense. So even if he does play, he might be more of a defensive pass rush role, in that kind of sense. But so we can't expect much from him either. But yeah, man, it's a rough out here in these injury streets. But I mean, the silver lining, hopefully it'll be Joe All getting back, and maybe Jamari Salyer can hold the right tackle down for this week and get Trey Pipkins back next week. So let's talk about keys to victory real quick before we get out of here, man. Yeah, so obviously getting Joe back healthy would be a blessing. Hopefully we get him back and he plays tonight. That would be a blessing in its own right. So we'll hopefully see that. Get him back in and keep Justin Herbert's left side, his blind side protected. I will say the Vikings D line in the interior, especially, isn't that overpowering, much like the Giants and the Colts that we've seen in recent weeks. They've been harassing our O-line, so hopefully that's a blessing and not having to see that dominant edge rushing and internal D-line pressure. But I will say this: Brian Flores is a very savvy blitzing and stunning scheme guy, so we have to deal with that. So it's not a situation where we're not out of the woods, but it's not a man-on-man overpowering environment. You ain't got to see Brian Burns and Adub Carter and DeForest Buckner and all those guys. You ain't got to see those guys. but his unit as a whole is very savvy. So you got to protect from that, but they don't overpower you just by personnel. Now, again, get from offensive perspective, you got to establish the run. If they can establish the run and lean on those defensive line guys, that'll make it easier to protect Herbert in the pass game. It will be. That's always the case. They lean on them in the run game, move their bodies in the run game, their pass rush tenacity will fade. And then get early on, you got to establish a quick pass game. You got to keep doing that because the protection has been great internally or externally. You have to get the quick pass game going and keep them off balance. Get those short routes going with Ladd and Keenan, and hopefully QJ can get free down the field. But yeah, we got to establish a quick pass game and stay on schedule. Can't get behind the chains, can't get, to the second and third longs where they can play coverage and sit back and rush the passer and get after Herbert with this O-line and their woes. Got to stay on schedule, second and short, third and short, keep moving the chains, keep staying on schedule, and keep scoring points. If you don't do that, it'll be a long day again. We're going to be complaining about the pass rush, and the O-line yet again in another week. Defense, again, from the internal line perspective, D-line perspective, better run gap integrity. Better run defense integrity. You got to improve that. Justin Herbert got to simplify that scheme and just get guys in the right position to defend the run. We can't let Jordan Mason run wild because the problem is this. If Carson Wentz has a solid run game to lean on, he's going to be way more dangerous than he normally is. If you have to make him pass 30 to 40 times a game, you got him in your wheelhouse and he will make a mistake. But if he does have a decent run game to lean on, he only got to pass the ball 25 to 30 times a game at the most, he can be dangerous, especially with those weapons. With Justin Jefferson, Hawkinson, Addison, those guys, it could be a problem. It could be a problem. So having better run gap integrity to stop the run and keep Jordan Addison from going off is going to be primary one for Jesse Minter. Secondly, pressure Wentz on early and often. If you can get after him on second and third downs and in pass situations, rattle him, he will fold. He will make mistakes. He's always been that way, and I don't see it changing. So you have to do that. Get past that aspect of letting them run the ball and getting after Wentz. The game should be in the defensive hands, and we should have a way better showing we did this week than we had last week. So, boom, there's your keys to victory. So we'll see how things shake out, man. But hopefully we get a better showing. Hopefully they'll be pissed off, and it'll be a wake up call for the team, and they can bounce back and get things going, in this matchup. And hopefully they'll come out with a victory and get back into the graces of fighting for the AFC West, because the Broncos are taking the division over and the Chiefs are on their heels. So, we're kind of middle right now, but if we keep dropping games, we're going to be, hobnobbing with the Raiders, and we don't want that. We don't want that. So we got to, there's going to be a dogfight in this division going forward. So we got to win the games we need to win. So, and this is one of them. So hopefully we can come out with a victory. We have a better, positive, more, I guess you can say optimistic outlook for our recap next week, but it's gonna be interesting to say the least. So hopefully we can get a victory, man. But if you're looking for the Electric Chuck Podcast in any platform, any facet, always hit that subscribe button on the YouTube channel to let the algorithm know we're doing big things out here. Drop us a line on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, or Facebook, or Gmail if you need it. Drop us a line, drop us a follow, DM us if you got any questions you need about the channel. And hopefully we have another positive outlook and get a victory going into the Titans game next week. But in the meantime, between time, man, that's my time. And hopefully we get this dub, and I'll see y'all on the next video. And you always got to remember to bolt up.